Hi everybody, I'm sports psychologist Dana Blackmer of the Extra Gear with another episode on how to train your brain for peak sport performance. This is the Extra Gear Podcast. Today we start the first master class from the Extra Gear's Big Brain University. I'll explain more about it later, but you're going to like it. All that and more right here, right now on the Extra Gear Podcast. The Extra Gear. While I was driving to work the other day, I began thinking, how can I give listeners more in-depth, step-by-step instructions on how to use mental skills to perform at their peak in their sport? The challenge was how to find a way to do this without creating a podcast that was too long or asking listeners to do long assignments that would feel a little too much like homework. That's when I got the idea. Do a series of short podcasts on a single topic. Explain the skill in more detail. Keep it practical and focused. Make any assignments short and to the point, and make sure that you give athletes something that they can use right away to improve their mental game. These series of podcasts would be like a mini lecture series at a university, except a lot more fun. Are you ready? Okay then, let's go to school. Athletes, coaches, distinguished parents, welcome to this college of knowledge, this mentation nation, this vortex of the cerebral cortex, where the only tuition is your cognition. Get ready to train your brain. This is the Extra Gear's Big Brain University Master Class. Strike up the fight song, maestro.
Wow, that was weird.
Okay, class. Take your seats, please. Quiet down. Okay, thank you. I want to start today by taking you to ancient Greece. In the forecourt of the Temple of Apollo at Delphi, there's an inscription. It reads, "Know thyself." This saying has been attributed to several big-brain Greeks, including Socrates, Heraclitus, and Pythagoras. Now, none of these guys were sports psychologists, but they were pretty smart, so they probably would have made pretty good ones. Knowing yourself as an athlete means having awareness of how you respond and what you need in different competitive situations to perform at your best. To know thyself, that is, to have self-awareness, is one of the cornerstones on which the foundation of peak performance is built. The more you know about your peak performance state, the more you can use mental skills techniques to get closer to it in your competitions. And the closer you can get to your peak performance state, the more likely it is that your performance will improve. So today, I'm going to talk about how you can discover your peak performance state for your sport. If you think about your past practices and competitions, you can probably recall a time when you felt in the zone. A time when you felt like you could do nothing wrong, like everything was easy and automatic. It's also likely that you can recall a time close to this performance when you felt just the opposite. That is, you felt unmotivated, lethargic, bored, fatigued, and like you couldn't do anything right. What accounts for these day-to-day differences in performance? It's unreasonable to think that your fitness level, your technical skills changed in such a short period of time. More likely, it was your mental state that changed. Most every athlete knows what it feels like to be in the zone. But describing the characteristics of this zone is much more difficult. The characteristics of this zone can vary from person to person, but research done by psychologists Sue Jackson and Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi indicate that many athletes describe a similar subjective state when they have a peak performance. This state, called flow, is thought to be the mental state required for peak performances. While not all athletes experiencing flow have a peak performance, it does seem likely that all athletes having a peak performance are in flow. There are 9 characteristics of flow that have been described in this research. 1. A challenge, skills, balance. People in flow feel challenged by what they're doing, but they believe they have the skills to do it successfully. 2. A merging of action and awareness. People in flow often describe a feeling of being one with their actions, a feeling that there is no separation between who they are and what they're doing. 3. Clear goals. There's a well-defined idea of what needs to be done to succeed at the task. 4. Unambiguous feedback. It's clear how well the task is going and what needs to be done. 5. Total concentration. People in flow report having their focus completely on the task at hand. 6. Total control. There's a sense of being able to do anything without consciously trying to control it. 7. Lack of self-consciousness. People in flow report no worries, no concerns, no fear of failure, and no self-doubt. 8. Time distortion. This is the feeling that time speeds up, or more often, time slows down during the activity. And finally, the 9th characteristic of flow is called the autotelic experience. This is the feeling that the task is intrinsically motivating. That is, the task feels so enjoyable that performing it is its own reward. Now, of these 9 characteristics of flow, the ones reported by athletes as most important during their peak performances are the merging of action and awareness, total concentration, total control, and the autotelic experience. The work on flow has attempted to identify the characteristics experienced by all athletes during peak performances. That is, how the zone is the same for everyone. But not all athletes experience flow in exactly the same way. So when you think of the 9 characteristics of flow, think about the ones that you experienced most in your peak performances. This will help you begin to identify the characteristics of flow that are most important for you. A second line of research has taken an individualized approach to peak performance states. That is, it's looked at how the feelings of people during a peak performance differ from one another. The idea is that everyone has their own unique peak performance state, and the emotional characteristics of this state differ from one athlete to the next. The task then becomes how to find out what combination of emotions puts an individual athlete into their unique individual zone of optimal functioning, or eyes off. This research, led by psychologist Yuri Hannon and his colleagues, focuses on constructing what's called an eyes-off profile, which is a graph that depicts the unique combinations of emotional states an athlete experiences during a peak performance. Now, constructing an eyes-off profile, as Hannon describes it, can provide an athlete with lots of good information, but it's also pretty complicated and time-consuming. But fear not, I'm going to give you a quick and dirty way to make the process a whole lot simpler. But you will need to do a little homework before the next podcast. Okay. All right, settle down. I promise it won't be that bad. Here's what I want you to do. First, think of one of your best performances ever. Choose a time when you really felt in the zone, like everything came easily, like you could do nothing wrong. After you have one of your best performances in mind, take about 3 minutes to imagine the details of this performance as vividly as you can. To begin the imagery, sit or lie down comfortably. Take a deep, slow breath. Hold it for 2 seconds, and then slowly exhale. Close your eyes and relax. Imagine this best performance as vividly as you can. Really focus on all the sights and sounds around you. Try to re-experience what your body felt like as it moved and what your thoughts and feelings were at the time. The more vividly and detailed you can imagine this performance, the better it will be in helping you construct your peak performance profile. Next, I want you to recall one of your worst performances ever. A performance when it felt like everything was tough, like you just didn't have it, like you couldn't do anything right. Recalling a bad performance can be more difficult than recalling a good one, because we naturally avoid reliving times that were emotionally unpleasant. But imagining both a good and a poor performance will give you a much clearer picture of your peak performance state. So, just like you did before, take about 3 minutes to imagine this performance as vividly as you can. Use all your senses to see all the sights, hear all the sounds, feel your muscle movements, and experience thoughts and feelings you had at that time. After you're finished, keep both these performances in mind. You'll need them for the next podcast. You might even jot down a few notes about what you imagined to keep the details fresh in your head. In the next podcast, I'm going to show you how to analyze these 2 performances to determine your peak performance state. That's it for now. You can find more mental toughness training tips on the Extra Gear website, www.theextragear.com. Until then, this is sports psychologist Dana Blackmer, the Extra Gear. Goodbye, everybody.